Hello, students, and welcome. We're so glad to have you with us to learn a little bit about Puerto Rico. Today, I am talking to Professor Israel Rolon-Barada. He is a professor in the Modern Languages, Literatures, and Culture Department. He's been teaching Spanish classes at Monmouth College. We're very delighted to have him. He is our resident expert on Puerto Rico. So Israel, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your background?
Yes, absolutely. Hello to all our dear students and colleagues. I will be glad to tell you everything about Puerto Rico, at least all what I remember. It happens that, yes, as you mentioned before, I am from Puerto Rico, and I was born and I grew up in San Juan, Puerto Rico. And after, when I was, like 20 years old, like everybody else, we also like to take a look to our mainland, to the States, in terms of studies and opportunities. But before that, I would like to point out that since I was a kid, thanks to my parents, they were always taking me traveling to the mainland. We were during summer times, we were exploring and visiting different points in the States. So since I was a kid, I was used to come back and forward. And at the same time, since we very soon we will start talking about our history and our political situation, I want to start by telling you that my parents took me not only to the States, but also to Spain all the time since I was a kid. So I was used to visit the States and visit Spain for obvious reasons, because we are a little island in the Caribbean. Puerto Rico is a very little island in the Caribbean, but at the same time, it is a very interesting one, and it's unique in a lot of sense. Because why do I say unique? Because Puerto Rico has two cultures, and this is where we have to start analyzing the situation and considering the fact that perhaps uh, students, not all our students, might be aware of that. Puerto Rico belongs to United States. It's officially American territory, but before that, Puerto Rico was a part of Spain, was a Spanish colony. And we need to point out this year like a key to start our conversation. For example, we are talking about 1898. In 1898, Spain lost the last three colonies. Spain that had everything, that a long time ago had everything. Spain lost the last three colonies, that they were precisely Puerto Rico, Cuba, and Philippines Islands. And then whatever happened was that the reality is that next day after Spain lost Puerto Rico became a part of the United States. The United States was nearby, and by the American War, they were really looking at the situation and very conscious about it. And they offered us help. They offered Puerto Ricans help to get independent of Spain. And after we said, well, sure, why not? This is a very poetic way of putting that. But United States, obviously, they did help us to to get rid of Spain, I might say. And then after that, next day, Puerto Rico was officially American territory. United States put the flag, the American flag there, and that was it. So since then, since 1898, Puerto Rico was American territory, has been American territory since then. For most of you, you might think that it's a long time. Perhaps you see that like a very far away date, but honestly, it was the other date. I mean, it was the other day. It's not that, it wasn't that long ago. We are talking about a century. That means, why do I tell you that? Because that means that, for example, our grandparents, most of our grandparents were born before, or great grandparents, they were born before 1898. So even if they were not coming directly from Spain, whomever was born in Puerto Rico before 1898, guess what? They were officially Spaniards. They were Spanish citizens, Spanish citizens. So that means that, I mean, in my case, like most cases, our grandparents were coming from Spain. In my case, my grandparents were coming, they were brothers, and they were coming from, for example, from Valencia, Spain, or from Canary Islands. And what they did was that once they arrived to the Caribbean after 1898, they moved to Puerto Rico or to the Caribbean or to Cuba, for example, looking for business, looking for opportunities. Why is that? Because Spain lost absolutely everything. There was nothing left, and Spain jumped into a big depression in every sense, in terms of economics and everything else. So a lot of Spaniards moved to the Caribbean and also to Mexico and to Argentina and to Latin America. It's true. But a lot of them like Cuba and Puerto Rico for a lot of reasons, because they were the last colonies. They were the last two colonies because they already had relationships in the islands, and because it was a very pleasant place to start business. So that's mainly how, in my case, and in a lot of cases, how our grandparents arrived from Spain to the island. So in my case, again, my grandparents, my grandfather arrived with his brother, and then they split. They went, some of them, I mean, family members, they went to Cuba or they went to Puerto Rico to start and to compare, to see where was better. So they could communicate to each other and visit each other, and they were actually helping each other. So that's a little drop of history. So passing the page, we go to our next chapter. That means that, as I was telling you, since I was a kid, my parents were taking me either to the States or to Spain. So I was totally used to visit both places and know, and they were part of me. I grew up with both cultures in one. And like most Puerto Ricans, like most people in Puerto Rico, obviously, this is not just my unique case. This is just the majority of people in Puerto Rico. So I am glad to have that opportunity to grow up in a bicultural island, a bicultural place where I had both cultures into one. So I grew up learning English, but at the same time, my mother language was Spanish. And that's something that our students, they need to know. The official language in Puerto Rico is Spanish. The official language in Puerto Rico is Spanish. It's not English, it's Spanish. And we actually saved a lot of our roots, we saved a lot of our Spanish roots, our customs, our food, our music, our religion, the Catholic religion, and all of that comes from Spain, not from the States, of course. And other than that, shine. For example, in the Olympic Games, we can participate as Puerto Rico, not like Spain, not like United States, but like Puerto Rico. That means that there's a lot of things, a lot of benefits that we had by this relationship to the States, by this historical and political relationship that we have with the States, but at the same time with Spain. So this is what makes us unique. We are an unique place where we have two cultures combined into one. And this is very interesting because this is the only territory, the only part of the United States where you have this combination, where you have this combo, yes? And for example, and now we go, now from here we can go to make sure that we can go over and explain how it happened. Puerto Rico, as I mentioned before, since 1898 was part of the United States, was American territory. And by then, during, let's say, up to the 10s, the 20s, the 30s, the 40s, we always had a governor that was assigned, was pointed out and assigned by United States government. It was not until 1948, that Puerto Ricans citizens were able to vote and to select our own governor. So that's a very interesting point that we need to know. And here we have some pictures that we will be looking at very soon. But in the meantime, I need to tell you how it happened. I need to mention a special name. The name of our first elected governor. Our first elected governor ever was Luis Muñoz Marin. And Luis Muñoz Marin was in power for 4 periods, 4 times. So that means that he was, as a governor of Puerto Rico, he was based in our equivalent to the White House that is called Fortaleza. He was our governor for a total of 16 years, since from 1948 through 1965. And I am glad to tell you, I'm very proud to tell you that he was apologizing myself to people and other people, to the rest of Puerto Rico who perhaps don't think in the same way, but he was the best governor ever. He was in power for 4 periods, as I said, and it's not that he lost the elections. If he were alive, he would still be the governor of Puerto Rico. Why is that? Because he was the one who created everything. He was the father of our Commonwealth. That we will start talking about that very soon. But before that, what I want to point out is that Luis Muñoz Marin was, as I said, in power for so many years. And when I mentioned that he didn't lose the elections in 1965, his medical doctor told him that he had to leave, he had to quit, he had to stop being the governor because he had a heart condition and he wasn't going to be able to continue being the governor and doing his work and performing as a governor because of his health. So that was basically the only reason why he had to just give up being the governor of Puerto Rico. And then obviously he was he left and he was alive until 1980. He finally died, unfortunately, in 1980. In the spring, it was April of 1980. But then going back to talk about Luis Muñoz Marin's policy, politics, orientation and goals and his philosophy, we can start right now looking at this beautiful picture that we have in front of us, where we have, this is the Canal 6, the government TV station. That it happens that is just across my parents' house in San Juan, Puerto Rico. And here you have the 2 flags, as you can see. this is one of the interesting things that we are covering today in this conversation, in this class, because it happens that Puerto Rico, as I said, is very particular. For example, and given the relationship to the states, we have different aspects and conditions that we need to consider. For example, one of them is the fact that in any part, the United States flag, and on the right side, you will see a Puerto Rico's flag. The flag of Puerto Rico will be always at the right side of the United States flag. In any public building, in any building, wherever you see the American flag, you will see the Puerto Rico's flag by next to it. But on the other hand, I need to point out that given our status quo, our Commonwealth of Puerto Rico that was created by Luis Muñoz Marin, after his first election, we go back now to that point. Even if Luis Muñoz Marin was elected by the first time in 1948, it was not until 1952 that, thanks to Luis Muñoz Marin and his proposal to the Congress and to the Senate in the United States, in the Capitol, that was when he was finally able to start our status quo, our Commonwealth. It's called the Commonwealth of Puerto Rico. And that's the form of government that we have since then. That I have to tell you as well, I have to face it, I have to accept it, and to share with all of you that it has been under debate since then. Our statehood, the way of government, the way of our political status has been under debate since then. So since then, we have this situation, this detail that I am really glad to tell you, to share with you, the fact that we always have two flags. I already said the opportunity that we have to participate in any international event, like for example, the Olympics Games, like Puerto Rico, not necessarily as part of the United States, but by ourselves, like Puerto Rico. The same thing is in something also perhaps less relevant, but still significant, as in the Miss Universe contest. Puerto Rico can always participate with Miss Puerto Rico instead of Miss United States. And so many other things when we are talking about international politics and international aspects. And for example, in terms of the role of Puerto Rico from an international point of view. And that's what I meant. Now, on the other hand, whatever happened with Puerto Rico, here you have a picture of the University of Puerto Rico. That is a state equivalent to any state university that was created and was funded in 1903. So you can appreciate these beautiful pictures and this interesting pictures perspective of the tower of the University of Puerto Rico, that I also consider my alma mater, because that was the first university that I went, where I earned a degree in business. And then from the University of Puerto Rico, when I was 20 years old, I moved to Washington, D.C., and I went to study to Georgetown University. Georgetown University, I mentioned it because it's precisely the university of Governor Luis Muñoz Marin. That's exactly where he went to study and where his alma mater. In any case, we have here a few pictures so you can appreciate. I hope our students, one day you can visit the island that I'm very proud of, and you can visit the University of Puerto Rico, and you can visit all the touristic and also our natural areas where, for example, the beach area, the mountains. Puerto Rico is a little island, so little that you can actually drive from one point to the other in a total of 2 hours. You can cross the island in 2 hours. And then, but on the other hand, we also need to point out that it's in the Caribbean, And Puerto Rico has the Atlantic Ocean and at the north, and then at the south, at the bottom, we have the Caribbean Sea. So we have everything. We have a beautiful nature. Puerto Rico is a beautiful island full of natural resources. For example, coffee and sugarcane, and a lot of other natural resources like any Caribbean country, island or country, including Venezuela. We share a lot of characteristics in terms of the environment and our natural resources with the rest of the Caribbean, with Central America, and with Venezuela. And even Colombia, Venezuela, Panama, Colombia, Venezuela, and the north of South America. Now, if you would like to, Andre, if you would like to show the next pictures, that would be great. Thank you so much. Here we have a very interesting picture. As I mentioned, since 1952, Luis Muñoz Marin was able to achieve through his relations in the States. For example, he was married to a very interesting lady. She was an intellectual, she was a writer, a poet, and her name was Muna Lee. Muna Lee was a journalist as well, and she was able to keep a close relationship to another journalist, very interesting lady. Her name was Ruby Black. Ruby Black was a friend at the same time. She was a friend of the first lady, Eleanor Roosevelt. So since then, since the 30s, late 30s and early 40s, up to 1945, that President Roosevelt was in power, it happened that Luis Muñoz Marin and his wife, Muna Lee, were friends of them, and they were able to actually navigate and start relations and in the White House. So this is a very interesting point because it happens. What I want to point out, other than the social and intellectual aspect, the most important aspect here is the fact that Luis Muñoz Marin, since he was in power since 1948, but at the same time, it was, as I said, 1952 was when he created our status quo, our Commonwealth. But on the other hand, for example, here you can appreciate how in 1961, this picture is from December of 1961, how President Kennedy and the First Lady were totally related and looking at Puerto Rico in different ways. And they were totally close to Governor Luis Muñoz Marin. Here you have when they first arrived to the island in December 1961. Here you have the protocol pictures and the protocolary pictures at the airport. Andrew, we have more of them. Here you have the receiving line and how important was that visit in 1961 for Puerto Rico, for Puerto Ricans, and for Luis Muñoz Marin. He had his big expectations and dreams regarding Puerto Rico and getting the very best for Puerto Rico. In this moment, I need to stop, please, Andrew. This picture, for example, shows their close relationship. And I want to point out something very important. Luis Muñoz Marin, he was a governor since 1948, correct. But at the beginning, we can point out, we can perhaps think how important was Puerto Rico for Luis Muñoz Marin when he was basically daydreaming about Puerto Rico's independence or Puerto Rico's autonomy. Perhaps Luis Muñoz Marin, and this might be very interesting and a point of debate as well. Luis Muñoz Marin was looking and thinking about Puerto Rico as an independent territory. And perhaps it was daydreaming about the day that Puerto Rico could achieve a total autonomy. But suddenly, after being the governor for a few years, he realized that one of our main problems was precisely the poverty. The poverty of the island was probably the most significant situation for him, was perhaps his priority, was precisely, and this explains then how he, leaving aside his dreams of autonomy for the island and the status for the island, the political status of the island, perhaps the most important thing was for him to achieve as much benefits as he could get out of the White House, out of the Congress, out of the United States for Puerto Rico was his reality. It became his goal. It became his task, his main task, and his priority. So that's how he moved into that direction. After 1948, by 1942, from 1948, in 4 years, by 1952, the most important thing for him was the relationship with the states and solving the poverty in Puerto Rico. So that's basically the most important thing that I have to tell you about Luis Muñoz Marin. Though since 1952 he started a transition, the island started its own development. He moved the island from being an agricultural island to an industrial island. And that's the reality. Obviously, I see the benefit, and a lot of people, perhaps half of the island, are conscious about those benefits. But on the other hand, I totally understand and accept that perhaps the other half of the island still are thinking about it and perhaps didn't like the transition or the development. Because, why is that? Because Puerto Rico left being an agricultural island and perhaps lost that concept of the sugar cane and the production of sugar cane and coffee and so on and so versus being an industrial island. How was that? Governor Luis Muñoz Marin was able to develop a program, an economic program that was called Manos a la Obra. In Spanish, in that obviously Spanish, manos a la obra means putting your hands on the actual work or to work. And that was in the term, the name of that in English was officially bootstrap, the bootstrap development program, where Puerto Rico was achieving and receiving a lot of benefits and supports from the Congress and from the United States in order to develop and to welcome American companies in the island. So American companies could establish in the island and where they didn't have to pay taxes or perhaps paying very low taxes for a lot of years. For a lot of years, they had a tax exemption, and where they didn't have to actually pay that much taxes as being established in any other state. So that was a big benefit for American companies, American pharmaceutical companies or manufacturers, like for example, Levi's, for example, Coach. For example, in terms of pharmaceutical companies, we are talking about, for example, Eli Lilly, Merck Sharp and Dohme, Abbott, and so on. So that was it is part of our economical situation, history, and status. But on the other hand, unfortunately, this is a very sad story. One single governor of Puerto Rico a few years ago, the last name was Rosselló. Unfortunately, he let it go. He didn't fight for it. He didn't save that. And unfortunately, we lost a lot of benefits since then. And the economy in Puerto Rico it's very clear that it's not doing well. Something that we need to know, we need to accept, we need to face. And mainly, one of the reasons is because of that. The other reason, moving on to another topic, is because unfortunately, we have been always also going through the different governments, governors. I don't want to point out or mention specific names, but at the same time, there has been a lot of corruption during the last few years, and because all of that, Puerto Rico is suffering very much today. Is paying the consequences. But going back to 1961, so you can see how Governor Luis Muñoz Marin wanted to develop a very close relationship to the new president, and how the new president was totally interested, like previous presidents. Why is that? Because Puerto Rico is in the middle of the Caribbean. In terms of geography, Puerto Rico is just a treasure in a lot of senses, but especially because Puerto Rico is just in the middle of the Caribbean. If you look at the map, it is right there, in the middle of the way. So that means that Puerto Rico was a very strategic point, geographic point, during the Cold War. During the Cold War for United States, Puerto Rico was a plus, was a treasure, was a very important strategic point. And Puerto Rico is also, other than that, I mean, the reality, Puerto Rico is a beautiful island. And United States, I'm sure there is everyone in United States should be glad and should have the opportunity to visit the island at some point. If you haven't done that yet, I hope you do, and I hope that you can enjoy every corner, every side, and every corner of Puerto Rico as soon as you have an opportunity. Now, going back to Puerto Rico, to that historical and economic history of Puerto Rico, we need to point out that was precisely under Luis Muñoz Marin how Puerto Rico became an industrial island, and we were able to develop other areas, like, for example, tourism. The tourism is one of the, everyone knows, Puerto Rico is a strategic touristic point and place and part of part of the United States. If you consider, if you take this into consideration, Puerto Rico into consideration, you have to accept, you have to face the reality. Puerto Rico is the oldest. San Juan is the oldest city in all United States. If you consider Puerto Rico part of the United States territory, you have to see that the oldest city in all United States is San Juan. San Juan is a Spanish city, was founded by Spaniards, and we are talking about 500 years ago. So not even San Agustin in Florida is older than San Juan, Puerto Rico. So that's another detail that you can take into consideration actually as an incentive to visit Puerto Rico and to visit the island and to visit the Old San Juan, where we actually have a lot of pictures from the Old San Juan that Andrea and me, we have been putting together. Is that right? Andrea, can we go to look at them?
Sure, we could switch over to that.
We take a look to them. So here we have a lot of pictures from San Juan, specifically from San Juan, that you can enjoy. Obviously, and Puerto Rico has the most beautiful hotels and important hotels in the Caribbean. And precisely since Governor Muñoz Marin was in power. And the oldest hotel in the island is it's called the Vanderbilt. Today is the Condado Vanderbilt. But we have these pictures are showing how beautiful the Old San Juan is, and you can appreciate the old colonial buildings. here you have an example of one of so many streets in the old island where I grew up, where I was living for a lot of years until I was able to leave the island and go to study in the States and go to Spain. But anyway, I always visit the island since then. And here you have the square, the main square. And here you have the background of my favorite spot, the Normandy Hotel. And by the way, the whole island was surrounded by walls, by Spanish walls, and there was the only door left. This is a view of the Caribe Hilton. Um, this is in San Juan as well, facing the Atlantic uh, Ocean. And here you have, for all of you, I mean, it doesn't matter if you're a student, if you're young, if you're old, one of the reasons why you have to visit the island is because of its beauty and the old San Juan and the walls and being able to have the opportunity to explore the island. Here you have my uncle, Noel Estrada, a composer of En Mi Viejo San Juan. That is probably the most popular Puerto Rican song, En Mi Viejo San Juan. And here you have more pictures of Condado area, it's the modern area. This is the theater at the University of Puerto Rico, the Puerto Rico's map. This is from a Puerto Rico's artist. And here you have a tree that is falling, showing how drastic the hurricane was in Puerto Rico, Maria, like 3 years ago, and how sad was our situation. But here we have a lot of pictures where you can enjoy, obviously, one of perhaps the most important things of the island. We are totally surrounded by water. So our fishing industry should be a plus, but unfortunately it's not. Like many other things that we should exploit and we should improve and take care of. But the previous governor, the last governors, they, for some reason or the other, they haven't been able to. But I'm very glad, I'm very proud of sharing all of this historic picture of Puerto Rico. And this is in the Vanderbilt Hotel, as I mentioned, the oldest hotel in San Juan. And Andre, if you would like to please ask me any specific, or if we should go over any specific area in terms of history, our political situation. This is in Dorado, or our arts, our culture. I would be glad to.
Sure.
One thing that I need to mention before I forget is, Andre, what I was telling you regarding people in Puerto Rico. Puerto Ricans, politics in Puerto Rico is a major thing. It's a major issue. We have 3 political parties, and this is something that we really need to mention and to point out. And of course, why not? In Puerto Rico, we have the people who likes, for example, who goes for our actual statehood, our actual state status quo, our actual Commonwealth of Puerto Rico, and all of these people, I include myself, I don't have to save it, I don't have to put it aside. I include myself as part of this, the majority of us who likes precisely what we have. That is the Commonwealth of Puerto Rico, and that's the Democratic Party. That's the Democrats. So we are Democrats because we follow Luis Muñoz Marin since then. So my grandparents, my parents, and even if I have to recognize, and what I want to tell you, I have to share with all of you, is that our reality. As I said, we have 3 different political parties. That's the first one, as I said, is the Partido Popular, is the Democratic Party, where this is what we have and this is what we want. But on the other hand, I have to definitely accept and look at the other two parties. We have a total of mainly three political parties: the Populares, the Democratic Party, as I have been telling you so many times, and also the Republicans. The Republic, they want, for example, the statehood. The Republicans, they look and they expect and they are looking for the day when Puerto Rico could be the next state of United States. And that's the other political party. And then the third one is the ones that basically the one people, the Puerto Rican people who would like to have the freedom, who would like to be independent of United States, who would like Puerto Rico to be totally independent of United States, to be a nation by itself. Something that, I mean, again, I accept, I face that the three different parties. And to tell you the truth, as I mentioned at the beginning, this is our big passion, and this is our sports. This is our life. Politics in Puerto Rico is everything. Like so important football might be for you, so politics in Puerto Rico is everything. And I have to also tell you that not because of that. That doesn't imply I can talk about myself. I can talk about what I like or what I expect or what I have been on what I dream of. I dream to continue having the both cultures in one, to have the American culture and the Spanish culture in one. This is my taste, this is my preference, and this is what I prefer. But on the other hand, I have to accept and face and give also the benefit to the other two political parties. That obviously all of them, they like the best for Puerto Rico from their personal point of view. That means that, what does it mean? That, for example, I cannot tell you that I am right and they are wrong, or I cannot tell you the opposite. I cannot tell you that they are right and I am wrong. It's just a matter of feelings. It's just a matter of what do you like, what do you wish, it's a matter of taste. Yes, and it's a matter of how much value do you give to our Spanish culture and our Spanish background, and how much value and importance do you give to the States and being American. Being American, we are Americans. I am American. Since I was born as an American because I am an American citizen. And that's something that students and everyone needs to know, because, Andre, as we have in previous conversations, I have been telling you that not everyone in the States is conscious or think that Puerto Ricans or people from Puerto Rico are Americans. You know, this is something that we need to clarify, that we are definitely American citizens. And we have all the benefits and all the conditions and all the goods and bad things from United States, because we are definitely part of it. On the other hand, I have to tell you that the truth, the reality, even in my family, even if among my friends, my best friends, I have everything. We have everything. We have all the colors, all the political colors, and all of that. We have in my own family, I have people that they are, I mean, family members that they are from, they are Republicans, and I have family members that they are Democrats, and I have family members that they are. Have also in the same way with my friends. You see, and I want to make sure that I'm explaining myself, Andre. I love them. You know, I love all of them as they are. It's not that I have any problem with that, and I hope they don't have any problem with me. You know, but this is part of our life. This is our daily life in Puerto Rico. This is everything. Everything is politics and everything is political parties and all of that, for good or for bad. Unfortunately, sometimes it it doesn't turn that pretty. It doesn't turn that nice, you know. And I have been facing, I mean, all of us, I say me, but we have been facing situations lately. For example, last summer, when our uh, last governor had to resign and had to leave the island. And that's precisely the son of that Puerto Rican governor who left the 936. That benefit, that economic benefit, is called the 936, and he let it go. And unfortunately, his son's situation was that there was a lot of corruption in that government, in that governor during those couple of years. So he had no alternative other than resigning last summer. And everyone in Puerto Rico, we were under a lot of pressure, even if I was not in the island, because I haven't been living permanently in the island since a long time ago. I have been most of my life in the States at this point. I've been most of my life in the States and also in Spain, where I was living there for a total of 5 years. So even if I'm not there, I still include myself. And I say we because obviously, even if I am living from the distance, I was living and experiencing all of that awful situation that Puerto Rico was going through last summer, because it was we were under a lot of stress and a lot of very sad and dark moments and situations. But again, with all respect to the political parties, because again, I don't have anything against them, but on the other hand, the only thing left that I have to say and to tell you, Andrew, is that I really love Puerto Rico. Muy bien. So if you have any questions, please tell me, ask me anything. I will be
Absolutely.
glad to answer as much as I can.
And thank you so much for that really informative background. And I think your love of the island definitely shows in what you shared with us. So thank you for that.
You're very welcome. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to tell you, to share with you and with all our students and with whomever will be able to enjoy this conversation in the future, to tell you a little bit about Puerto Rico. I don't pretend to tell you that I know everything. Obviously, I don't. But on the other hand, and also, um, I am honest. I'm always honest. I'm always open and transparent. So I tell you how I feel, what I feel, and my perspective. But I totally understand and respect every other perspective. Again. So if you have any question about the economy or the political, any political aspect, please, I would be glad to go over with you. For example, Puerto Rico, is good to know that, I mean, everyone knows that we have American dollars. Obviously, we use American dollars. We're American citizens. Everything is American. We have, unfortunately, we have a lot of McDonald's in every corner, and all of that. And that's not even nice. It's not even funny. But anyway, that's our reality. But we have a lot of, also we save. We have a lot of Puerto Rican restaurants, Puerto Rican cuisine, and Puerto Rican drinks and everything. Puerto Rico was, do you know the official Caribbean drink, piña colada, was created in Puerto Rico. The piña colada, the Cuba Libre is rum and Coke. That was also, it is from Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico, we have the best Puerto Rican rums, the best rums in the Caribbean, in the States. Even if you receive only, we promote only Bacardi in the States, Bacardi. We have a lot of Puerto Rican rums. And we have some rums that they are actually gourmet, like Barrilito, for example. We have a lot of Puerto Rican food that is very similar, very alike, very Spanish food. We have a lot of rice dishes, and that's basically because our Spanish heritage. And we have the most beautiful Latin American and Hispanic music. And obviously, I say that with a lot of pride. But I have to admit it. I mean, we also share the same music with Cuba, with Mexico, with so many Latin American countries. I just want to say that we have the most beautiful Hispanic music. But that's obviously, I have to control myself because it's not true. We share the same with Cuba and with Mexico. I have to accept it, you know. And we have great, in terms of history also and participation. We had Roberto Clementes, that that was our baseball star from all times. He died, unfortunately, he died in a tragic accident in the 70s, early 70s. But Roberto Clemente, still a well-known baseball player. And so we have also people that, because our historic situation, because our economic situation, there were a lot of Puerto Rican families that they went to New York, and they started their families in New York. And that's why today we have a very good looking and important people, like, for example, Jennifer Lopez. See? And we have a lot of interesting people that they are basically a consequence of their grandparents or parents' immigration from the island to the mainland, to specifically to New York in the 50s and so and so, in the 40s and the 50s and so. But today, people from Puerto Rico are spread all over the states. Me, myself, I tell you, I mean, I have cousins. My cousins are all over in Puerto Rico, but also in Florida, in Texas, in every place, in Chicago, in precisely in Illinois, in New York, in all over. My cousins are spread all over the states. And there's cousins that perhaps I haven't seen in years because of the distance, and so and so. But they are all my cousins. I have cousins, and to tell you the truth, I have cousins that they don't know one word of Spanish, that they only speak English, and that's the only language that they know, because they grew up and they are part of our mainland and not part of the island anymore. But that's another reality. But but please ask me anything. I'm so sorry. I keep remembering important points and I'm pointing out, but I think that I'm pretty done. If you have any specific questions, please welcome.
Well, these are all good points, and actually that leads to one of the questions I wanted to ask you, which is, what is the relationship, or how do people on the island view the mainland? How do people view the states in Puerto Rico?
Well, we are very conscious that we are part of United States, and we are very conscious that we are American territory and American citizens. But we also have to accept and to see that perhaps not everyone. There may be people in the island, a lot of Puerto Ricans, that perhaps they have never been in the mainland. I have to accept it. We have to face it. Perhaps, I mean, little by little, less and less. But we have to also look at this. For example, I have to also go into, let's talk about the reality with some people that they would like to be independent, and they feel independentistas. They believe that Puerto Rico should be a free island and a free country. And for them, talking about that, to go back to your question, perhaps they don't like, they perhaps inside of them, or even they can express that freely, they don't like being American, and they don't like being part of United States. They rather prefer not to be American citizens. They would like to, if they were choice, they would like and they would love to be independent. And I have to accept that. I have to face it. I have to tell you, I have family members and friends and dear friends that they are independentistas, and I totally understand their feelings regarding the states and regarding being forced since 1898, been forced to be American territory. So I guess that there we covered two aspects, two areas to answer to your question. Now let's go to the third aspect, to the third political party, to the people that they would love to become, for Puerto Rico to become a state, the statehood. And they daydream, they are also daydreaming about that day. I say daydreaming because obviously I don't think that it's going to happen. Me personally, if you ask me, I don't think that that's gonna ever happen. But if it happens, perhaps it's going to be in a lot of years from now where we won't be able to see that, perhaps. I don't think that I will see that. Why is that? Because it's pretty complicated. It's pretty complicated, and I don't think that it would be that easy at the Congress right now. Let's take it for example right now. Let's go to our reality. I believe, please tell me if I'm right or wrong, but I believe that there should be a lot of other priorities other than Puerto Rico in the White House, in the Congress. Yes or no? I just want to be with my feet on earth. Do you know what I mean? But on the other hand, that to answer to your question, to your specific question, so I have to tell you, I am talking for them as well. I can tell you that there's people I know people, I know friends, I know family members that they tell me face to face that all what they want to be and to know is that they are Americans and they will be a state one day, and Puerto Rico is the next state, and that's the most important thing for them, and that's their dream, and that's their reality, and that's all what they care. And I totally understand, and I totally accept it as well. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So here you have, in other words, your question has three different answers.
Yeah. Yes. Great. And I think that's what we would expect given the diversity on the island. And it actually leads to my maybe the last question that I want to ask you, which is in my class, we've been talking about some terms like Latino or Hispanic or Latin American. And how do you think that Puerto Ricans view those terms? How do they view their relationship to other Latin American countries like Mexico or Colombia or Venezuela?
Well, this is a very delicate subject as well. I really like Latin American countries, but we don't consider ourselves a Latin American country because we are not a Latin American country. Our reality is that we are Americans, and this is, our situation is unique. I mean, we on the other hand, the way that I can answer, the one that I can tell you, the reality is, for example, I'm talking about my perspective, and then we go into another people's views or perspectives. For example, we have both backgrounds, as I said at the very beginning, the Spanish background and the American background and cultures. I am an example. This is how I feel. I grew up with both cultures into one culture. So when I travel to Latin American countries, and I can appreciate, I have been traveling, not every place, but for example, to Mexico, that I love Mexico. And for example, Venezuela, where I have been so many times, and so on. So I totally identify with them. I totally identify with them because there's a total click. There's a click, an automatic click, right? But on the other hand, I'm conscious, and they are conscious, that we are not exactly the same, that we are, for historical reasons and for political reasons, we are different. We are, let's say, we have been enjoying since 1898 a different situation. And so we are conscious about that as well. That's all what I want to tell you. Though I need to clarify something. Being Latin, even when we are filling out a form in any in any place, I always have a traumatic experience. I always have a conflict, you know, an internal conflict that lasts for the next 24 hours. Why is that? Because I don't know, I never know where to click, where to you know, to check, what box to check. If I should check American, if I should check Hispanic, if I should check Latin, if I should, what should I check? Because sometimes I end checking all of them. And I say, well, I mean, it's for them to solve it, to decide. Do you know what I mean? Because that's the way that I feel. And somehow that's a reality. I feel everything. I feel anything and everything. And that's positive and negative at the same time. Because if you ask me, for example, I lost that identity thing. I feel Spanish, I feel American, I feel Puerto Rican. If you ask me, depends where we are. If we go to Spain, if you and me, if you and I, we take a plane to Spain and arrive there tomorrow morning, and we are there walking by Madrid and having tapas, Spanish tapas, and having Spanish wine, I tell you, I will tell you, listen, I mean, I feel Spanish. You know, I feel a Spaniard. I'm a Spaniard. This is me. This is me. This is my background. This is what I love. This is what I am. This is how I feel. And my accent, you will laugh because my accent will change automatically. It's like a click. You know, it's like a linguistic click that I don't even do it purposely. It happens. On the other hand, if I'm in the States, I feel American. If I'm in Puerto Rico, I feel Puerto Rican. So let's see if I can define that, you know, if I can explain that to you. If I'm in Latin America, visiting Mexico or Venezuela or any, I feel Hispanic. I feel Hispanic. I said it automatically, Hispanic. That implies more than being Latin American, because Hispanic includes Spain and Latin America. So how I feel myself, I feel Hispanic because I am a mix. The consequence of all of that. So, but these people that they might feel Latin was when I'm in the States, like I am right now, of course, my home. This is my home, Philadelphia. This is my house, and this is where I live. And or when I used to live in Washington D.C. because as I mentioned at the beginning, I went to study to Georgetown University, or I have been living in Boston, a city that I love. I have been living in Boston for a total of 15 years. Near around 15 years of my life, I have been in Boston. So I feel Bostonian sometimes. Do you know what I mean? So what I don't like, what I dislike, and I feel kind of awkward and uncomfortable, to tell you the truth, is when someone in the street or in a government office, or even at the supermarket, they look at me and they ask me and they think that I am Latin American, you know, and they speak slowly to me so I can understand every single word. And you know, I feel like kind of, you know, hey, I mean, what is going on? Do you know what I mean? So this is just in a very low key conversation. And, you know, it's funny. It's kind of funny. It could be sad. It could be depending on the perspective or the point of view. And that's how I'm talking about myself. And I hope, I mean, I'm talking in a broad way. I cannot talk on behalf of the rest of Puerto Rico, of Puerto Ricans. You know, I do know that there's some people in Puerto Rico. I know Puerto Ricans that they feel that they are totally Hispanic or they are totally from Latin America and they are not Americans. And I can tell you that I also know some people that they think that they are totally Americans. And they even say verbally, they even say it, that they are Americans first, that they are American first and then Puerto Rican. But I don't think so. Not me. I'm from Puerto Rico, I'm Puerto Rican, and I am a mix of everything, and I'm very glad, I'm very proud. And that's perhaps I hope I was able to answer your question.
Absolutely, and I think there's so many complexities to it. And I think leaving off at that point is a really good place to end here. And I just want to say thank you again on behalf of our students and on behalf of me and everyone who will learn from this video. Thank you for sharing your knowledge with us, for your culture, your insights, and everything that you're able to contribute to our building up of our knowledge of Puerto Rico. So thank you.
Great, great. I'm very happy, and please, on that note, I also thank you so much for this opportunity, because this, I think that is very important that students and future generations, they see the right thing, they know the right thing, and they see us as we are, you know, as part of Americans, American citizens, Puerto Ricans, Hispanic, Spanish, and part of the United States, you know. And if you have any further questions, or any of your students, or any colleague, any other professor from your department or so, if there's anyone in the future that might have future questions, please, I would be glad to be here for all of you and to answer to anything that you need to know. Okay.
Very good, very good. Well, I think the next step is we all need to go to Puerto Rico. So
absolutely, let's take a plane. Let's make it. Let's make it as soon as the pandemic situation it's over. Yes, so we can travel and we can go to the island and enjoy every corner. I will be glad to take you to every corner in Puerto Rico. Yes.
Very good, very good. And thanks to all those who are viewing this video as well.
Buenas tardes. Have a good one. Have a good weekend. Buen fin de semana en español. Muy bien.